Stay warm and save every day, all in the Kroger app.
Get 10 for $10 on select varieties of Kroger pasta, Starkist tuna pouches, or Powerade. Then get flavorful fresh Heritage Farm chicken split breasts, drumsticks, or thighs for $1.49 a pound, all with your card.
Shop these deals at your local Kroger, less than 5 miles away. Or tap the screen now to download the Kroger app to save big today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Prices and product availability subject to change. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Podcast Season 7, Episode 16. My name is Tim. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined by Jonathan Coolide in Moncton, New Brunswick.
Hello there, kids.
And we're also joined by, I hope he remembers his tagline, we're also joined by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going? I was driving to my new job this week here in scenic New Brunswick, Canada, and I was listening to the two of you and the episode you did last week in my absence, and that part made me laugh so hard. Where Jaime's like, nothing.
Have you ever seen those NFL Follies videos where like everybody moves at the snap except the center who's still holding the ball? It was kind of that situation. Yeah. It was like everybody's ready to play, all 22 players except that one dude.
So is he like, does he get run over by people, or is he just holding the ball and nobody can do anything?
There might be some where he gets run over, but usually you see people running past him. Yeah. The refs kind of chuckle a bit. Play does not start until the ball is snapped by the center. Whether the quarterback is even ready or not doesn't actually matter. Like there's definitely follies you'll find out there where the quarterback wasn't ready and the center tried hiking the ball to him. But no matter what, in every rule book, the play does not begin unless the center snaps the ball.
That's why you got to remember your snap count, Jaime. That's why you got to remember your snap count.
The outro does not begin until we hear Deb with the hair.
And I think that's what, just to put a cap on that, I think that's what threw me off the other day, where normally it's Tim and then there's a little beat and then it's me, right? Like the little beat was JPK News there that was not there. It threw me off. Like my body or my mind wasn't ready to do my part.
Well, I'm glad I've left an indelible mark on this podcast.
Yeah, we do sort of fall. You fall into patterns too. I've noticed that if I try to mix up the intros and stuff, or even outros. Like Mark once said to me, you always talk to Jaime first, and like so I changed it to talk to Mark occasionally. But that throws them both off then. Anywho, let's get on with some fact checks. So last week, Jaime and I were guessing as to who Neil's mother's character's name is, and one of my guesses was Numa. So Geneva Carr voices Neil's mother Numa, and she gets credited as playing Numa. However, Dawn Dininger, who played a Rodian, how do you say that?
Yeah,
Rodian in The Mandalorian. There's a scene with her and with Paul Sun Hung Lee. We're just staying in an office, Appa. She played the Rodian. She's also played she's done desk jobs in The Mandalorian as well. But she plays Numa in Skeleton Crew. So she actually does the physical embodiment of Numa. Jonathan, you got another fact check?
Yes. So you guys were talking about the Golden Globes last week and questioning what the timing was. And I think everybody, I must admit, I looked it up. I am not familiar. I know that it was different from the Emmys, so I looked it up. Here's the details. So the Golden Globes are based on the calendar year previous to the awards. Mm-hmm. So the awards that were handed out in early January were from January 1st to December 31st of 2024. The Emmy Awards, which are theoretically the highest caliber television awards, are for the 1 year period before the award show. So for 2024, it was from September 15th, 2023 to September 14th, 2024, if that makes any sense. And the answer is no, it doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. But, you guys were talking about how the Golden Globes were not necessarily knock your socks off. I think that was the fallout from the strikes that we had the year before. I think they're just, Tim, you mentioned that, Shogun it was good, but not great. But like, I think the idea is that last year, I mean, if we're going to do the Spockies probably in the next week or two, there's not a lot of great, because a lot of things got delayed, a lot of things got postponed. I think some things got spread around. It just wasn't a great year for anything, TV, movies, whatever. It was good, not great.
So the other thing we were talking about last week, to throw this into you, since you're here, is we were talking about the need to show streaming shows in a theater I think in LA. They have to show for a week or something like that to be eligible.
Oh, to be eligible for the Oscars? Yeah, you have to actually have a theatrical run in LA County for a period of 7 days, I think is the rule.
Right.
So basically you have to, so that's how they do the Netflix and the Amazon ones that aren't necessarily, they're more Oscar bait than they are big budget, thinking to make a lot of money, kind of 2,000 theater ones. They basically show them at any theater in LA, which is a real spoiler for it's a real benefit for LA. It's a real bummer for everybody else, because they get to see all these cool movies in the theater that some of us never do.
Yeah. Well, it's like, but Jaime was making a point about art films that get nominated, but they don't necessarily perform. And it's funny, because I didn't mention it at the time, but I was thinking it, is that they actually had that Golden Globe Award for biggest box office. They gave it some other name, but it was like...
It's box office achievement, I think is what they called it. But
yes, they mentioned in sales, yeah.
The idea, I think, is that they want... Unlike the Oscars, they actually seem to care at the Golden Globes about populist films. They want people to be like, I wonder if Wicked wins, because they want people to tune in, whereas the Oscars are improving, but they're still a little bougie. They still really want... I mean, we're going to see the nominations next week, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But it still tends to be a little more highbrow, I think, is a nice way to put it.
Cool. All right, we'll move on to the headlines. Oh, and this is me up first. So I was watching Stephen Colbert last week, and I've got a clip here from the show of his interview talking about Severance, and he's doing a special on his parents were Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira, so he's doing a show on about their life. Jerry Stiller as George Costanza's father in Seinfeld, but you may not know Ann Mira. But they were like comedy gold for years. But
I have some of their vinyl records. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but in the middle of the interview, Colbert switches the subject and sort of says, "Hey, you finally got some bucket list things." And turns out that Ben Stiller is one of the people who some of those auctions we've been talking about in the last little while. So he bought Kirk's tunic from The Enemy Within.
Nice.
He's got a nice little desk intercom, and he actually owns the Gorn head, right? So And actually, he saw Leonard Nimoy was watching one of his movies. I think it's Tropic Thunder, and he saw that somebody had Spock's ears on their desk, and so Nimoy sent him his actual ears from the movie. Whoa. I assume it's from the movie, right? That's kind of cool too, right? So yeah, he's obviously a big star. We were talking about who could afford this stuff. Well, now we know, right?
Mm-hmm. So you have to be a Hollywood star and big screen director to be able to afford that?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can beat Ben Stiller out on 2 out of 3 of these things, you're obviously driving a Porsche, that you're not leasing. Okay, so over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, some bad news this afternoon. We lost a little bit of Hollywood icon, David Lynch, the auteur director who most famously for our crowd did the original 1980s Dune movie. He died this afternoon. He was 78 years old. This was, arguably a visionary. He directed very famous things like Twin Peaks and The Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, Eraserhead, Mulholland Drive. A very unique vision. I can't say I liked everything that Lynch did, but you knew it was going to be something that was absolutely unique, and there's not a lot of artists you can say that about. So it's I think we're all a little bit less for not having him making weird things out there, because he was really quite something at it. I'm a particular fan of Mulholland Drive. I actually enjoyed that movie a lot. It's a really unique and quite haunting movie. It really sticks with you long after. I tried to rewatch Dune a while ago, and
I watched it. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
It's not great, especially once we've come around to the Denis Villeneuve. It doesn't quite do it anymore, but to be fair, they've said for years that book could never be adapted into a film, and he certainly did take a huge swing. He certainly did make it, and it's certainly not a perfect movie, but I think for a lot of people that was pretty dynamic that he was able to pull that off. So
yeah, and of course in his usual style, he did sort of what was it? Heavy metal kind of, Mobius. Some of the characters in there were kind of like very sort of comic, like illustration sort of style, sci-fi illustration style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which we don't get. We usually just get, some really wacky animatronic, or CGI or something like that, or a person playing a character, right? But
yeah. Anyway, it was he was definitely a unique visionary, and his work will stand, I think, for a long time. So sad to see him go.
Yep.
And Jaime, you have another bit of sad news for us.
Yeah, Mr. Baseball Bob Uecker passed away at the age of 90. I've got his Miller Lite must be in the front row. His baseball commentating on the movie Major League from 1990 is just some of the most iconic, where they have Charlie Sheen as the wild thing who throws the balls like 8 feet out, and he goes just a bit outside. He was so funny. One of the all-time guys, I saw when he passed away today, people were posting some of his quotes, and he said, "I was the minor league player of the year in 1963. I'd been in the majors 2 years by then." Like, again, this guy was an original. Like, just so funny. It's so great.
But he was a baseball player, but then he was also a sports commentator before becoming an actor.
He was sort of simultaneously.
He was a broadcaster for the Milwaukee Brewers for 54 seasons.
He sure was. Wow. Yeah.
So I always thought of him as the Indians, but that's because of Major League.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Milwaukee
So he
Brewers.
actually was a TV broadcaster after Major League or whatever.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, for years and years. Yeah, again, an original. It's always sad to see the originals go, people who really kind of do their own thing.
Yeah, so I posted this when all I saw online was that the Oscar nominations were delayed till January 23rd. I assumed it was because of the fire. There was no other comment about it. But I see here, John, you've put a link in.
Exactly what you surmised, Tim. It's definitely because of the ongoing wildfires and tragedy that's going on in LA County. There's a lot of devastation, and of course, we're all our thoughts are with those people and what's going on there. But
still going on, right?
Yeah, no, and it hasn't stopped. There's still fighting, and still obviously a lot of danger. So it's really, really messed up. And yeah, so they were supposed to announce the Oscar noms this week. They bumped them to the 23rd tentatively, but they didn't. I mean, who knows how all this is going to go? Again, there's a lot of people who are now without a home, not the least of which are a lot of celebrities as well. So this is a pretty devastating situation they got going out there. And speaking of that, it kind of carried over because we've got the Critics' Choice Awards that were supposed to be this week have also been postponed. They have rescheduled them for the 26th of January. So they were supposed to be on, I think, the end of this week. They were supposed to be on Sunday. They were supposed to be on Sunday. So they have bumped those as well. And they had also announced that they announced the SAG Award nominees. They were going to do like a big ta-da about this, but they ended up just doing it via press release because their whole live announcement special that they were going to do had to be canceled because it wouldn't have been appropriate in the light of what's happening out there. So we can briefly talk about that. We didn't get a lot of our kind of stuff in here. Now, these are awards that are more for acting. They're not, they don't do a best picture. They do best performance by a cast in a motion picture. So you basically get the entire cast gets honored. Nothing really in our world here unless you count Wicked, which, I don't know, do we want to claim Wicked as a sci-fi fantasy spotcasty kind of thing? I haven't seen it.
It is fantasy, so...
Yeah, it's musical fantasy, though. I don't know. Where do we draw the line? Do we, do we have a say on that? Well, Wicked was one of the nominees for Best Cast. We also got... Well,
the Demi Moore movie is definitely sci-fi, so...
Yeah, that's true. So, outstanding performance by a female actor in a leading role, we got a couple. So, Cynthia Erivo was nominated for Wicked, and Demi Moore was nominated for The Substance. So, those are both sort of fit into our area. And then we also got, in a bit of a surprise, Jonathan Bailey got nominated for Wicked for outstanding performance by a male actor in a supporting role, and he edged out a number of actors that have been sort of on the rotation for a lot of the awards so far. So that's a bit surprising. And then Ariana Grande got nominated for outstanding performance by a female actor in a supporting role as well. For the TV categories, the closest I guess we come is outstanding performance by an ensemble in a drama series, Day of the Jackal, which you talked about last week, Tim. Shogun's back in here, and Slow Horses, which is a show that we're fans of. And beyond that, it's just there's not a lot that when you get into the performances. Tadanobu Asano was nominated for Shogun for outstanding performance by a male actor in a drama, and Eddie Redmayne was nominated for Day of the Jackal. And Hiroyuki Sanada was also named for Shogun. And
Gary Oldman,
and Gary Oldman. And for a female actor, it's Anna Sawai is up once again for another award for Shogun. She seems to be cleaning up, so I wouldn't be surprised if she walks away with that one as well. Where it does get kind of interesting for us is the outstanding performance by a male actor in a miniseries or television movie, because there we get Colin Farrell for The Penguin, and then in the same category for women, they have outstanding performance by a female actor in a miniseries or television movie, Kristen Milioti for The Penguin. I thought she was sublime, so I've been pulling for her.
Have you watched True Detective Night Country, though?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, Jodie Foster's really good in that.
And she's the one who won the Golden Globe for that, so it's quite possible.
Yeah, and the other actress, too, the Indigenous actress, she didn't seem to get nominated for this, but she was quite good.
Yeah, and the one thing that the SAG Awards do, which I like, is they have a category for stunts. So they have an outstanding performance by a stunt ensemble for movies and for television. For movies, they had Deadpool and Wolverine. They had Dune Part 2, Fall Guy, Gladiator 2, and Wicked. For TV shows, The Boys, Fallout, House of the Dragon, The Penguin, and Shogun. All of those are sort of in our wheelhouse. What I found surprising in this is, where was Furiosa? Because Furiosa had some great stunts in it. So I was a little surprised to not see that in the motion pictures. So... c'est la vie. But that's kind of the rundown of the SAG Awards. So all of this gives us a little bit of a picture of what's coming up by the time we get around to the Oscars. I don't think we're going to see a lot of love for either Dune or for much of the stuff that we kind of make our bread and butter out of here. So. Oh, well, better luck next year.
Except for all the stuff we watch on Apple TV and Disney and stuff that we talk about outside of sci-fi, right?
On the TV side, I think, yes, more so. But the movie side, it doesn't seem like there's a lot. A little bit of interesting news from our friends over at Deadline.com, who wrote an interesting piece about Warner Brothers and just kind of what they're up to right now. The headline is, "Why Warner Brothers Shook Up Its Feature Exec Ranks as It Braces for an Auteur-Driven 2025 Slate." And it's kind of a big picture, inside baseball kind of piece. But if you go down a little further into the story, there's an interesting sentence in there where they're talking about upcoming projects. And for us, there's some definite interesting stuff in there, because they're talking about a few movies that might get made, including the fact that they're working on a new sequel to The Matrix that Drew Goddard is working on, and they're also working on upcoming potential sequels to Gremlins and Goonies from Christopher Columbus, who, of course, famously directed the first Harry Potter movie and Home Alone and all kinds of, big movies. So, are you ready for another Matrix, another Gremlins, and another Goonies? Tim, I was disappointed to hear you didn't like the Goonies. I guess it's probably a little dated in when you're seeing it for the first time, but I like that.
No, I've seen it. It's my second time seeing it, but yeah, I guess it's like Jaime sort of said, it touches all the young anxieties that are in there. But I just found I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of that lady that plays the mother.
Oh yeah, she's something.
And John, what's his name from The Matrix, plays the younger brother.
Yeah.
I mean, it was good. I mean, it was interesting to see Sean...
Joe Pantaleone.
Yeah, it was interesting to see Sean Astin and Josh Brolin in early roles, right?
Yep.
I mean, I get I suppose I might have been more impressed with Data in when it first came out, because it's of its time, like the kind of gadgets. He's kind of a Inspector Gadget kind of guy, but he was a little weird too. But and I feel, and you're right, I got the feels for and I guess also because it's pre CGI, so you got the practical effects and stuff like that on the forgot the name of the monster now. Chunk. Yeah, I mean.
Oh, Sloth. No, it's Sloth. Sorry. Chunk is the kid. Sloth is the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a Spielberg movie. And I mean, because it did have all the sort of, the tunnel slide you guys mentioned and the caves and and it was a bit odd with them. Other than what we saw this week was, them shooting at the kids running through the cave kind of thing. It reminded me very much of a video game too, right?
Yeah, but I think you have to look at it from an influence perspective too. Mm-hmm. You can see it's a touchstone in the way that I think it influenced a lot of subsequent
other movies. Yeah,
movies that you can definitely see reflections of it in other things, especially when we happen to be watching Skeleton Crew. It definitely seems front and center there. Yeah, Jaime, how about you? Are you more excited than Tim for these things?
Yeah, I want to see what ends up happening. Like it feels like a very challenging thing to do. We have talked on this show about multi-decade differences between sequels and what's been more or less successful. We're going to talk about Skeleton Crew. I think it has a lot of those vibes, so it certainly feels plausible to do in the updated era.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that after that last Matrix movie, I need more Matrix movies. But I guess they're just going to keep going to the well.
Yeah. So did Stand By Me come after the Goonies?
I think it was a year later.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay, next up, the first full trailer for Daredevil Born Again, the new upcoming series on Disney Plus, dropped this week, and it was a banger. What did you guys think of this first trailer?
Anyway, I was interested to see the sort of dialogue between him and Kingpin. I've forgotten his name now.
Vincent D'Onofrio, yeah.
Yeah,
amazing.
But I mean, there's what's the name of the character? Wilson Fisk. Yeah, mm-hmm. The two of them talking about, where you been, what have you been up to, kind of thing. You're no longer a vigilante, blah, blah, blah. You've come up in the world. And that kind of, I guess, sort of to catch us up on where they've gone since Daredevil's been off the air. But yeah, it was interesting. I saw The Punisher in there for a bit and all that kind of stuff too. Yeah, so can't remember if I watched that show or not. Go back and see. But it looks good. It's a good character. I like that character.
Yeah, and I love that rendition of the character. How about you, Jaime?
Yeah, I'm excited to see this. Especially some of the... I think they're in a diner or something where they're sitting there in a diner talking to each other like normal human beings and adding some tension to, what's going to happen between these folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's always kind of a fun movie TV trope when they have the hero and the villain just sitting down and civilly having a conversation when what they want to do is beat the crap out of each other. I always find that, that sort of tension to be really interesting. But I love those two. I mean, I really enjoyed that Daredevil Netflix series, and I I'm so happy that they brought these particular actors back to play these parts, because they just get it. They just completely get, like, this is everything. I mean, Daredevil is one of my absolute all-time comic book jams. I love the character. I love the world. I love the way that so many different writers have been able to explore the nuance of this character. And I thought that the TV show that they did was as good as all that. I was a little worried when they were talking about bringing it back to Disney Plus that they might Disney-fy it, but it doesn't seem like it from what I'm seeing there. It looks pretty dark and pretty edgy, and the fact that they did Deadpool and Wolverine last year and made it an R-rated movie kind of gives me hope that this could be maybe not as over-the-top violent as some of the stuff from the Netflix series, but I don't need it to be uber violent. What I need it to be is edgy. I need it to be a thriller. I don't need it to be a gore bomb. I need it to be like keep me on the edge of my seat. And I think from this trailer, it looks like they can do that. Little casting news. So we saw that in the first season of Ahsoka, we saw a really terrific performance for Ray Stevenson playing the character of Balin Skoll, who is the sort of, not necessarily Sith, but dark Jedi, who is one of the people pursuing Ahsoka and her friends. And unfortunately, right after that series finished and before it aired, Ray Stevenson passed away, and that was a big loss for everyone, because he's a great performer, but also particularly because he was set up for more adventures in the second season. And so the question became, well, now what do they do? Do they write him out? How do they do this? It really seemed like his character kind of had more story to tell. This week they have rumors have been flying. I don't know if this has been confirmed. There is a lot of different places reporting that his role of Balin Skoll is going to be taken over by Rory McCann. Rory McCann is a name you may not know, but you probably know who he is. He played the Hound on Game of Thrones and was an absolute fan favorite in that role. And because he was so sort of covered in makeup and prosthetics for that show, because he's supposed to have had his face and his scalp all burned when he was a boy. He'll be one of those faces people will see on the show and be like, well, he doesn't look the same, but he kind of looks different, and he seems familiar, but I can't quite place it. Tim, of course, Rory from a different role. He's famously in Hot Fuzz, the Edgar Wright movie. He plays the giant who simply utters the word "yarp" a lot. Yeah, and is a great one in that. But I mean, to me, if you look at them side by side in this article, they've got a picture of them side by side. I mean, one thing Rory certainly has is the stature that Ray has. Ray was just a huge human being, and Rory is as well. So I think that at least that will be pretty comparable. So I'm hoping they can pull this off without being too disruptive to us following along with this character.
Yeah, no, definitely looks cool. Good role. I mean, he's a big guy. Like that was the dude who played who passed away was a big guy too, right? So
yeah, Ray, yeah, absolutely.
Which one did he play? He played the one with the face burned off, right?
He was the Hound. Yeah, he was his brother was the Mountain, and he was the Hound.
Maisie Williams' traveling companion.
Babysitter. Yeah. Honestly, that I think was one of my favorite parts of the first few seasons, is when the two of them are together. I really enjoyed his story. I'm gonna try not to go too far into this one, but so there had been allegations made against the author Neil Gaiman earlier last year that a couple of different women had accused him of not sexual assault at that point, but like sexually inappropriate behavior and grooming and all these different kinds of things. And it made me very, very sad and very, very uncomfortable, because I am a lifelong fan of his art. There was an article that came out last week that had much more details, much more allegations. Please do not click on this link in the show notes if you are squeamish, because it's very, very graphic at times. He has since issued a statement denying that he committed any kind of sexual assault, saying simply these were consensual acts, and that he realizes that he may have used his power inappropriately, but that he doesn't think that he is a sex assaulter. Any way you slice it, this is awful. It's awful stuff. I've had a chance to speak with Neil before for my work as a journalist, and he was always very nice to me, but of course I'm not a young woman, so he clearly didn't want the same things from me that he wanted from these women. And it's really, I mean, this is the same way that we feel every time we have to talk about one of these stories, but I hate that this art of his writing has always been so excellent. I've enjoyed his work since I was a teenager. I'm extremely disappointed that this behavior is going to be in my mind when I'm trying to enjoy his work ever again. I don't want to not enjoy his work. I mean, again, it's really, really hard when your favorite artists and creators turn out to be not good people. And in this case, while he is denying it and none of this has been proven in court, the allegations are extremely detailed and extremely unpleasant. And I'm extremely sad to learn of these facts.
I read a different post, and it goes into much more detail than this one does too. So
yeah, as I say,
it's written from a first-person point of view by one of the accusers.
Yes, yeah, and that I think that's what came out first, and then this piece that has multiple allegations is more recent. But yeah, it's. Can we just say for the record that Spotcast thinks that all men should learn to keep it in their pants? This is just disgusting.
100%. Yeah.
Like, God, geez, it's just awful. I mean, everybody in power should learn to just behave themselves, but men in particular, come on, guys, we got to do better. This is bad. This is just bad. Anyway, I don't want to belabor it, just to say that it's a very disappointing turn of events. I believe these women. I feel extremely bad that this has happened to them. I hope that they can find some peace eventually in dealing with this stuff, and I'm extremely disappointed to hear somebody whose work I enjoyed so much has behaved this way.
Yep. Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, like, just to touch on that one point you made was, like, you're right. It's going to be difficult to enjoy one of his novels, especially if it's being read by him. I feel the same way about Kevin Spacey. I liked him as an actor, but I cannot stomach watching. I mean, like, even a movie like Seven, I don't think I could go back and watch it because I just don't believe the guy, the actor, the person, the man. And then same thing with like people like Billy Bob Thornton. I know you feel that. I feel the same way about Billy Bob Thornton as you feel about Tom Cruise, in that I watched him explode on an interview once, and I just thought it was completely inappropriate given who he is and how his career had gone, that he was being completely unreasonable. And I've never been able to watch anything with him seriously again. Like, just, so I mean, I think that's the sad part about this, separating the art from the artist. If the person's a jerk, it's really hard to appreciate the quality of their work, right? So, I mean, that said, you can go way back into the 1500s or even earlier to hear the exploits of Leonardo and Michelangelo and make a decision there too, right? So I don't know. In 500 years, maybe he'll be forgiven, but
I mean, as I say, it's really unpleasant. I mean, one of the series that he was originally the author, of course, of Good Omens, which is on Amazon. So he was the show, one of the executive producers, and I think he was working on the third season of that show when these allegations came out last year. He stepped aside from the show. You can take that however you want to take it. And they, instead of doing a third season, have decided to do sort of one wrap-up movie to sort of finish telling that story, but he will not be involved. Whether or not they're using his story, I don't know. The second season of the Sandman series is scheduled to come out this year on Netflix. At least it was. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. The Sandman is one of the most exquisite stories I've ever read. It's beautiful, and it's poetic, and it's absolute exquisite literature. And now I just don't know how I'm going to be able to enjoy that the same way, and it really bums me out. So, well,
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it there because we could go on for hours.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so, okay, I'm up next. So this is an interesting one. I told you guys I watched Alien Romulus. I'm calling this post-Alien Romulus Redux because they have, since the movie came out, they rushed it to, they feel they rushed it to production. They had an animatronic character. When they arrive on this ship, it's obviously been devastated by aliens already, xenomorphs. And in order to find out what's going on, they do the thing where they take the android character and they, charge him back up again, kind of like KB does with SM33, right? But it was I don't know, it was kind of like an 80s animatronic. It seemed okay, but it wasn't really believable. It was supposed to be Ian Holm, like a version of Ash from the original movie, and it was okay. It was clearly an animatronic effect. But apparently now if you go and watch the movie online, and I haven't gone back and checked it myself, but apparently the version that's on Disney Plus, which is what I watched, right, has now been updated with a CGI version of the same character.
Ooh, so how do we feel about that?
Well, Sonic the Hedgehog. That's all I got to say to that. But,
so if they do something and they make it better, we're on board. But if they do something to an original film and so how do we? Okay, so let's go to Phantom Menace. Menace.
Let's was it Phantom Menace? No, let's go to A New Hope.
No, it's Phantom Menace, where when Phantom Menace first came out, they made a point of saying, well, we're bringing back Master Yoda, and he's going to be a puppet. And they did that, and they were like, okay, look, he's a puppet, and he looks terrible. And then they immediately went back, and they CGI'd him, and he looks infinitely better. So how do we feel about those things? How do we feel when they make a change for the better? I don't know.
Well, it's the same thing with like, to me, A New Hope was, like you said, it's a touchstone in movie making, right? Because it was the first time they had sort of used computer-controlled cameras to do the flybys on these ships, right? And it was amazing. But given that it was in a theater, dimly lit theater in 1977, in retrospect on 4K, on TV and with an LCD screen with, amazing resolution and great black and white balance, it doesn't hold up, right? That original movie, right? Yeah. However, and admittedly, and I kind of get what George Lucas was going on about with having to go back and redo it, but replacing and again, we could talk about the Star Trek, the original series too, because as you know, I'm not a fan. I've gotten used to it, but I'm not a fan of the fact that they changed all of those ships to be CGI, right? In the the flybys that they did on the outsides, right? So and we go back to my original intent in that I learned this in art school, in high school actually, was every great artist needs someone behind them with a baseball bat to hit them over the head when they're done. Right, because otherwise an artist would just keep, they keep seeing the problems in the work that they've done, and they'll keep wanting to fix it. Right, they'll never, in the game in development, they'll never release. So, was it necessary? I don't know. Is it going to be that much better? I don't know. But I'll notice. But if I hadn't told you about it, would you have noticed? No, right?
Well, no, because I hadn't seen the original movie. But I know I've done that in the theater, even back in the 90s. I swear there are times where, I have as you have mocked mercilessly, I have a very strong memory. And I swear I have seen scenes in movies where when I saw it in the theater to when it came out on VHS cassette or DVD, that they've dubbed a new line or they've changed the cadence of something. And there are scenes where I'm like, I know that's not what it sounded like the first time. And it drives me bananas.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I have an original print of a digital print of A New Hope, because every now and then I just like to go back and watch it when it wasn't called A New Hope. It was just episode 4, right? Yeah. But there's a lot of examples of that too. Anyway, they can do it, but again, they should slap the Redux on it and Blade Runner is another example. So for years, like when Jonathan was younger, he used to have a huge collection of VHS tapes of movies that he'd seen and all that kind of stuff, right? Which is legal in Canada at the time, anyway. But there's a scene in A New Hope where Luke is up in the hills and he's looking down at the sand people and he says, I see banthas, but I don't see any sand people. And he says, oh, wait a minute, there they are. Well, when we were watching this in 4:3 crop, right, there are no sand people.
Yeah.
Right. And my point to him was at the time, and it took me a few years to convince him, but now he's totally on board that it should be seen in letterbox because that's how the artist George Lucas originally intended it to be seen. And if you watch it in letterbox, you'll see two sand people walking in from the edges of the frame. Right.
Well, now this is the part where it's important to flag, hey kids, Tim and I are old enough that we had a 4:3 CRT TV.
And that's all you got on movies, yeah.
And when you watch something in Letterboxd, it was like maybe a foot tall on your television. It was tiny.
Giant black bars top
giant black bars across the bottom. And I didn't, as a young man, enjoy that experience. I was like, but you can barely see it. Now that you have these incredible widescreen televisions, everyone's like, oh, this is the way they're meant to be watched. And I think, yes, you're 100% right.
Now the black bars are on the side if you're watching an old TV show.
Exactly. Or they'll reformat the TV show because that's what they've done with, they've done that to Buffy, they've done it to Friends, they've done it to all these shows. The original
series is now in Letterboxd too, and all they did was they cropped the top and bottom of the frame off.
Yep, and that's what they've done. I always find it funny when people are like, oh, I'm a huge Friends fan. I'm like, it's too bad you can't watch it the original way. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, they've cropped it. They've chopped huge chunks out of it. Because, of course, because it was shot in 4:3 back in the 90s.
Right, yeah.
So, people don't even realize. Same thing with Buffy. Buffy was originally a 4:3 show. And then later on, it became widescreen as it got into the 2000s. But the first few seasons are all 4:3. So if you're watching it on Netflix, you are missing big chunks of what's happening on screen.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting, like the Vision Pro. I hate to harp on this fact, but like it's interesting when I'm watching a native video player because you get like the window floats in front of you and it's just the film. But when you watch an iPad version, like Crave is on iPad, Paramount is on iPad. There's a Paramount app for Vision Pro, but it's not available in Canada yet. What? But the Paramount app is an iPad app. When you watch those shows, you get black bars top and bottom because you get the iPad aspect window, and then you get the letterbox displayed in the middle of it. So again, not a perfect world. But what I was going with that was if you had a 4:3 TV show watching on the Vision Pro in an original. In a native app, it should theoretically be still, the window should be 4:3. No black bars is what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
So.
All right, Jaime, we haven't heard from you. What is this? Is this kosher? You feel good about this?
I'm okay with like, hey, you know what? It looked kind of jank. We're going to fix it. Very targeted and specific. I think, I guess spoilers for Mandalorian season 2, we talked about, within a week of, the young Luke Skywalker coming out on Disney Plus, it's like, oh look, people had better versions with deepfakes. Like, why didn't they just do that? And so I feel like that's fine, that's appropriate. You want to make Tarkin from Rogue One look better? I'm like, yeah, cool, go with it. That's the same. You want to do?
He doesn't look better though. In Rogue One, Tarkin doesn't look better than the real Peter Cushing.
No. I mean, there was an AI.
An AI,
maybe not an AI, it was like a deepfake version of the CGI, Tarkin that looked better. I'm like, yeah, that seems fine, and the way I understand this change, I'm like, yeah, that seems fine. If it's like, oh, look, there's like whiz-bang explosions and all this crazy stuff, like the Star Wars re-releases that we talked about, I'm like, that's kind of less... That's less good. Or the ET replacing the police shotguns with walkie-talkies. I'm like, no, that's definitely crossing the line. Like,
yeah, that was bad. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess you could do the demake version where why shouldn't I be able to watch Sonic with ugly Sonic, right? Like that should be an option. We don't have DVDs anymore to do this, but it should be like a streaming option of like a caption. Which one do you want to see?
Yeah, like I say, you almost want them to put 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 on there just so you can see what the updates are,
Right, yeah, release notes, yeah.
Although I genuinely wonder after all these years how many different versions there would be of New Hope. Like it's got to be into the dozens at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I think the I think the Laserdisc version, or I meant you, I have a DVD version of it that's original, right? But, yeah, because I mean, there was like he redid it on the VHS release when it went to Letterboxd, and then he put it in the theaters and did it again. Yeah, I mean, to redo them, right? Like I've never I went and saw 5 years ago. I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater because I'd never seen it in a theater, right? But it was the redone, repolished, whatever. So I've never saw the 1984 version, right? Or whenever it came out. I've only ever seen the new and improved. Yep. Cool. All right, over to you, Jaime. Last one.
Yeah, this is a weird one. So if you want to watch live streamed, so not live broadcast, that's perfectly fine and normal. If you want to watch live streams of the Australian Open for tennis, there's a motion capture of the live players, but then rendered, as this article from The Verge described, as looking like Wii Sports characters. It's kind of weird, and they embedded a video, but you got to go in like 3.5 hours to see what it looks like. It's very strange. I don't totally get it. I can see that there's a precedence for things like here in the States, you have, the normal NFL broadcasts of the live games, but then you have on Nickelodeon, they have like the kid-friendly one where there's like SpongeBob as an announcer, and they show like weird augmented reality animations in the end zone and stuff. So it's just kind of a new era of mixed reality stuff. So keep an eye out for that.
It says here in the article that it's to avoid broadcast licensing conflicts, right? So if you want to watch the real show, you have to pay for whatever the feed is, right? Your channel or whatever.
It's really strange. Like, I understand that, but if I'm really wanting to see the outcome, I basically have seen the outcome. Am I going to be like, oh man, I was getting it for free on YouTube, but now I've decided that's giving me just enough of a taste that I have to see the real thing by ponying up money for the for fee broadcast version, whatever that's in, cable or what have you. Like, it just seems like a really weird one.
All right, well, this is the main part of the show where we talk about something Star Trek related, Star Wars related, whatever.
Something with star in it. As long as there's star in it, we're good.
Yeah, we're going to start this week with the Skeleton Crew finale, The Real Good Guys, episode 8. And we'll take it from there. What do you got for your elevator pitches and stuff? I'll go. Who are you going to believe? Some kids or some pirate guy? Yeah, I do have another one. That's no moon. But anyway.
Yes.
I did do a double take on the moon.
Yeah, I had it's time to grow up and enter the real world.
I had a satisfying end to a whole adventure where you don't get crushed at the end. Which is a play on something somebody in the episode says, but I thought was pretty appropriate.
Right.
Given how hard it's been to land these planes for some of these Marvel and Star Wars series, I think they did pretty well.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. It doesn't 100% wrap up everything, but it didn't feel like that happened for, hold my beer type moments. It didn't feel like, they're trying to stretch this out this season too. Like it felt like it ended at a fine spot, even though, again, it didn't wrap up everything.
Yeah, I think they could easily do a second season because there's certainly a lot of questions that get begged from this of, what does the New Republic do when they find out they've just had this mint hiding all this time, and what do these people do when they realize that they're part of a bigger universe where massive changes have happened, and now their world has been shaken to its core? What happens to these kids after having this adventure and now they're back on their boring world? What happens to Jod/Silvo, who theoretically had all these issues in here?
What about the collateral damage from the ship crashing into the ground?
Yeah, so there's certainly a lot of places they could go with another season of this, but I think, when we reflect particularly on the most recent Star Wars adventure that isn't this, which was The Acolyte, The Acolyte just did not close the loop on itself. It was really kind of setting the stage for something else. I mean, you can argue that outside of the appearance of Darth Plagueis, and outside of that little moment of, going to see Yoda at the end, that it's not like a crazy cliffhanger, but it was very clear that they intended initially to do more. They thought there was more story here to tell, and it feels kind of very unsatisfyingly ended because, it's about somebody turning to the dark side, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
So,
and the Acolyte was well before New Hope, right?
Yes, it was supposed to be, I think, like 100 years before Phantom Menace.
Like the dawn of the Sith or something like that, right?
Well, sort of the reappearance of the Sith. The Sith never really went away. They just kind of went into hiding. But this was supposed to be about, the rise of Plagueis, who eventually becomes the master who trains Palpatine, right? So it would have made more sense. But as I say, coming back to Skeleton Crew, it definitely feels like Skeleton Crew has a satisfying arc. All of the kids kind of have their hero moments. KB gets to pilot the ship and almost dies, but she's a hero. We get Neil, who remembers that there's a cannon on top of the school and goes and uses it, although you could argue not terribly effectively, uses it once.
But he remembered it was there. It gave them time, right? So
yeah, and Neil, convinces his dad to listen to him, and then has his hero moment as well, where he goes in and helps save Fern and her mom. And so, and again, the fact that Fern is standing up to Jod and kind of doing her own thing to find her own courage and have her moment, like, it's very satisfying as far as all those sort of things. You can argue it's a little formulaic. It's a little ticking of the boxes. It would be a well-paced hold my beer for Jaime's benefit, I guess. It kind of checked all the boxes that you were expecting it to check, but in pretty deliberate and well placed ways. There was nothing there where you're like, wow, they kind of just jammed that down our throat. It just kind of worked out nicely.
Yeah, it did have that Goonies ET kind of thing where they jump on their bikes and they kind of go.
Oh, yes.
What do kids do? They can't drive a car.
Well, yeah. There was definitely, and again, for the younger generations, there'll be echoes of Stranger Things, which of course is echoes of ET, which is like, it all just kind of reflects on one itself. But yeah. This was a pew 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 heavy episode. Which pew 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 really grabbed you guys?
I thought it was kind of neat. Not really a pew pew pew, but I thought it was neat that the ship, when it does come down into the like land or whatever, looked a lot like a pirate hat, like a tricorn hat, right? Yeah, I found that kind of interesting. And then, it was a lot of, the running and the trying to get from their houses to the school, I think, was kind of an interesting adventure, right? Mm-hmm. As a sort of a long ride, right? That was a cool part. Again, my only complaint about the pew 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 between the ships and the ground guns and stuff like that were just like, they still can't aim. Like when Neil's sitting on that big giant cannon, I'm thinking he's toast unless he gets out of there real quick, right? So once they turn their attention to him, right? Because in a video game, you just immediately start firing back at that pesky gun on the ground, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
How about you, Jaime?
Yeah, I went with the kind of more traditional X-Wings taking down the pirate ship. Or I guess more the X-Wings and the B-Wings. Like, they were tag teaming there and showing some cool stuff from the pew 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 perspective.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that this is the first time since... it's the first time in live action. It's the first time since Rebels that we've actually seen a B-Wing deployed properly, right? The great arc in Rebels where they acquire the prototype B-Wing and they use that as part of the rebellion, but it operates not entirely dissimilarly from the Death Star cannon, right? It's multiple points of energy that combine to form one giant blast. We've never seen that in Star Wars live action before this episode when two B-Wings they get into their sort of cross position and they use that giant cannon to attack the pirate ship. We'd only seen that before in cartoons, so that was kind of a neat little sort of nerd watch milestone. That was kind of an Easter egg, I guess. But the part that I really dug was they have been kind of doing Wim's dad Wendell kind of dirty this whole series of him being this big square who's, kind of afraid to see the truth and kind of, gaslights his son a lot and stuff like that. The scene where he just sort of balls up his fist and does like the Revenge of the Nerds punch on Jod was, I really got to admit, I dug that moment. That made me laugh. And get a little shiver up the spine. Good job, Wendell.
Yeah, and also reminding, I think it's one of our fans on the show in the spoilers room. Where's the spoiler room? I think it was Dave Price, right? Yeah, talking about, what do you say? You're looking at a level 7 systems engineer,
Yes, I had that in my quotes. Son, you are looking at a level 7 systems coordinator. Get the bike. Yeah, go on, Wendell. Easter eggs?
Well, you mentioned I wasn't sure. I'm not a huge Star Wars plane or ship guy, so I wasn't sure if they were called Y-wings or B-wings. So I put B-wings with a question mark, but you guys mentioned them already. But also the blockade runner at the end of the battle, the kind of blockade runner comes through the middle, which is every time I see that, that's like the first ship I ever saw in Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Right? So
I always like I have a Lego set of that one. It's quite large. It's probably about maybe 14 or 16 inches long. It's quite complicated, and it's very do love and respect to Lego, but it's not very well designed. If you pick it up, it just disintegrates. I've broken it apart like 3 times. I keep having to put it back together, and since I'm about to relocate all my belongings, it is currently in pieces in a box. But I love that ship, that design with all the multiple engines on the back. I get a wistful when I see that one too.
So if that's a consular ship, where is the ambassador?
That's right. Right. Jaime, any other Easter eggs catch your eye?
No, not really. I just had the supervisor saying about the last message from the Republic said that all Jedi were traitors. So that was the Order 66, which we got double confirmed.
I had that one, and then saying that all the Jedis are traitors, and then later on finding out that because they had said in the interviews beforehand that this was supposed to be set in the same time frame as Mandalorian and Ahsoka and all that stuff. So this is supposed to be set like several years after the events of Return of the Jedi, and we know that. But it's interesting that what the droid knows, because it's been cut off from the outside, is that Order 66 has happened and the Jedis are all traitors. When the Republic shows up, we find out that there's a new Republic, so we know that we're already in that phase too. So it's kind of a double whammy of all the Jedis are dead. Oh, by the way, there's also a new Republic and the Emperor's dead.
Yeah. And interesting too that was Stephen Fry as the voice of.
That was my other Easter egg. Was as soon as he started talking, because if he does the narration, which my very favorite audio book I've ever heard, and I've listened to it probably 5 times, is the English version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is read by Stephen Fry, and it is exquisite. His intonations and just the way he's able to use his voice on that book, it just slays me. I laugh out loud every time I listen to it, and so I know Stephen Fry's voice from anywhere. As soon as he came on as that gigantic droid, I was like, "Oh my god, it's Stephen Fry!"
Were you expecting to be a droid? I mean, we're kind of sort of thinking that, right? When they.
I mean, initially, no. Like I say, I was kind of initially thinking maybe it was there was like somebody in their midst, because I thought we saw that statue in
like an elected position or something like that.
Maybe like one of the people in their midst had basically been like, oh, I've been the supervisor all along or something. So no, I did not anticipate it was a droid. But having seen how when you go back and connect the dots, how efficient that society operated, how all the robots were in charge, of all the security and, just this utopia, you're like, yeah, it kind of makes sense that an AI was in charge, doesn't it?
Yeah. An all-seeing eye, big giant Hal, because he even looked like Hal at the...
Like a giant R2 unit.
Yeah, true.
Quotes. So we talked about the Wendell level 7 systems coordinator. I liked Wim. You're no Jedi. You lied, and now the real good guys are coming. There's nothing quite like the triumphal voice of a young person who's right. That's the galaxy. It's dark with just a few pinpricks of light. That's Silvo's perspective on the universe. And then the one on which I based my my elevator pitch. Come on, you don't want to have a whole adventure just to get crushed at the end. That's when they're standing underneath the crashed Onyx Cinder. But I thought that was particularly aimed at us, the audience, for so many of these series, it feels like you've had a whole adventure and you just got crushed at the end. Like, that's the Disney MO.
Yeah. Well, speaking of collateral damage, there's also the Jod's backstory about how he learned the little bit that he knows about the Force, but not having been lured into the becoming a Jedi and then being abandoned as a child. Again, that collateral damage from Order 66, right? So,
well, let me throw this to both of you. Jaime, did you always think that he was Force sensitive, or did you think there was something else going on there? Because I wasn't sure. I thought maybe he was kind of, there was something else going on there. We're going to find out that he was like a trick all along or something.
Oh, yeah.
The very first time that they showed him in the prison in the cave type stuff, I was like, okay, it could be tricks. But then after a while, I was like, no, I'm pretty sure this is real. He just isn't very talented, right? He's got talent. I'm not saying he's not talented at all, but he's not, like a Jedi.
Yeah. So my big question for this was, does it make sense to do a second season of this? Or are we going to see this integrated in some way into the larger arc of sort of all of the other shows, The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, sort of Star Wars, the Groguverse? Especially given that, we don't, Silvo theoretically is still alive. I mean, Jude Law is an A-list actor. He was, I thought, great in this series, playing both the sort of the charmer and the snake.
If this was the 70s, it would definitely be turned into a Saturday morning TV show.
Yeah.
With singing and dancing, just like the holiday special, right? So...
I mean, would you watch a second season of this, or do you want to watch a second season of this?
I could see it happening because there's my two big questions were what's next for Wim, because he clearly has a desire to do something different. He's the one who has changed the most. Fern is a really close second in terms of growing up and wanting to move beyond what their parents had in mind for them. And then also what happens to Captain Silvo? Technically, not dead, not captured. We assume he will be, but who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, he seems to, especially the fact that he didn't die, he seems too good a character to not want to see him again. But, I mean, he could come back without the kids, too, I suppose.
Yeah, as a character, for sure.
Yeah.
But, and Wim sort of looking up at the X-Wings as they're exiting, I kind of wonder if he wants to now be an X-Wing pilot kind of thing, right? So,
well, I mean, these kids, their universe just opened up in a massive way, right? They went from this extremely boring place where they were going to have these extremely boring jobs, and now they have had this huge adventure on another series of worlds and all these different things exposed. And now not only that, but that barrier is gone, so the world is right in front of them, and they've got some cash to spend. So,
Yeah, one of them says to him, "You don't have to do the assessment." I forget what the terminology was.
Yeah.
Was it assessment? He had to do an exam or whatever.
Yeah.
Which basically decides what level systems technician you're going to be, right?
Yeah.
For the great work.
Yeah. No, thank you.
So my two quotes. One I had was Wim's dad saying nothing like a home-cooked meal, which is pretty innocuous, except it was very clearly a TV dinner. It wasn't like he cooked it. He popped that sucker in the oven or maybe the microwave. It was really...
Samsung,
I thought that was interesting for how they, culturally perceived that on their planet. And then the one that I thought hits to the basic theme of the show, right? The loss of innocence and kids growing up and becoming independent in a world that is, yes, dangerous, but something which they must learn to navigate as adults, right? That's how I interpreted the theme. And so Fern's mom saying, the barrier was supposed to keep you from this, safe from the galaxy, which is an understandable thing for parents, but an unrealistic and ultimately, it's a worse thing to do to keep them so guarded and sheltered that they can't navigate adult life.
But even still, now that the parents have been, the barrier is gone, the parents are now in that same position, right? So, because they've lived in this perfect idyllic world, which is now open to scum and villainy, right?
But then, I guess it depends on who you are, because you could see honestly, if I wouldn't be as worried if I was the kids. I'd be like, this is awesome. Look, the whole galaxy's in front of us. If I was one of those adults who have just spent 25 years slaving away, grinding out whatever my task was here, and all of a sudden it changed, I'd be like, ruh-roh. Like, what do I do now?
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of people go through that in life.
Yeah. I mean, there had to be somebody who was the last buggy whip maker, right?
Well, not just that. I mean, even people coming to like North America, right? Their whole world changes, right?
True that.
And they're not giving credit for the work that they've actually done before.
No.
Right. What else do we do about this show? Oh, big questions, I guess. Yeah, the big question is, will it continue? Could it continue?
I think it could. Doesn't have to. So I feel like it was in a good spot.
I mean, I feel like it's funny because I think they go into these with the mentality of like, leave options open to do more. I think this is closer to what they probably should be doing as far as telling a story that, obviously it touches on the word Jedi and it has some of these allusions, but like, we didn't see any characters we knew. We didn't, other than that one random pirate that showed up that was from The Mandalorian, but like, it really kind of lived in its own world, which is good. It focused on not characters that were established, new characters, introduced some new blood, especially some younger blood. Like, I think this is not the worst idea that Star Wars has had, that Lucasfilm has had over the last few years. If they want to do more of this, I would watch these kids go on another adventure for sure.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Like, you've read you've probably seen a lot of the kid books and stuff like that have come out in the Star Wars universe over the years, right? Mm-hmm. Some that are not canon and whatever. And this is kind of like that. It's kind of like it's set in the universe of Star Wars, but not. I mean, there's droids obviously, but they're more like decent battle droids, in terms of how they run the place and. But then the whole pirate world and that kind of stuff, and all the ways they can go there, right? But you've read a lot of those books. I mean, like, are there not stories that have just introduced new characters in them? Like,
absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So there's lots of fodder for this kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely, and again, we've talked about it in the past. One thing that Star Wars keeps doing, which is unfortunate, is it keeps looking backwards. It keeps going back to prequels and early stories and all these things where it starts to get convoluted and complicated. I liked that the Acolyte went way back, so there was a lot less of that. I thought that was a good try at that. I like that this is after Return of the Jedi, where there's kind of a clear window. The other thing that's possible is, who's to say that an adult version of one of these kids isn't at, Rey's, academy in the new, Star Wars 10 that's going to come out in the not distant future, right? It's quite possible that they can have, adult versions of these characters that we now enjoy, and then tell, some of the childhood stories and some simultaneously their adult stories. As I say, fresh blood, not a bad thing. Not focusing on somebody named Skywalker, good thing. Like, let's tell some new stories. Let's create some new characters. It's a vast galaxy they've created. It's not just Tatooine and, Endor. We can tell more stories, and I'm glad that this one did. So, yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
Stay warm and save every day. All in the Kroger app.
Get 10 for $10 on select varieties of Kroger pasta, Starkist tuna pouches, or Powerade. Then get flavorful fresh Heritage Farm chicken split breast, drumsticks, or thighs for $1.49 a pound, all with your card.
Shop these deals at your local Kroger, less than 5 miles away. Or tap the screen now to download the Kroger app to save big today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Prices and product availability subject to change. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Now, back to the show.
So what are we going to
Silo.
Nothing but Silo. Yeah, the Safeguard. We talked about this one last week, but we didn't go into it because it had just come out. Like, for some reason, like tonight, I can probably go. No, is it over yet? No, yeah. After this show is done, I can probably go and watch the final episode.
Oh, the season finale, yeah.
Yeah, because Apple doesn't understand how time works. So
apparently, although today maybe they would delay it because they want Severance. They want people to focus on Severance.
That said, I probably can watch Severance now too. I'm just going to open my Apple TV.
I believe they're both available. I think they came out at 9 p.m.
today.
You are right, Jaime.
Eastern?
Into the Fire, the season finale is available right now. Well, let's just go on pause for an hour and watch that.
Yeah. But let's talk about The Safeguard.
Yeah, I mean, this season has been at times a bit of a pressure cooker. It's sort of slowly cooking, and this was one of the first ones where stuff kind of really starts happening. So that was kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get the new characters, the more reveal about the boyfriend girlfriend with the kids, and the eater as they call her, right?
Yeah.
And how bad people can be in that kind of situation, and the whole, they know about Solo, but they can't get into the vault because he's very protective of it, right? So
yeah, and we finally sort of get we've kind of known all along that Solo wasn't being truthful about how he ended up in the vault and what's going on there. So to finally get resolution on that, and then to have it be a somewhat happy turn of events where he's now realized that his responsibility isn't hide in the vault, it's stay alive, which he did, and so mission accomplished. Now stop hiding and be part of the world. And
on top of that, in the first episode, was he the kid that the guy sent back to go back and lock the door or whatever?
Yeah, I think so.
That was the same kid? Okay.
Yeah. And we, again, we're doing more of that bouncing back and forth where we got, stuff that's happening in Silo 17. Meanwhile, in Silo 18, we are also moving things forward. We got that kind of cool arc with Lucas that's been kind of also simmering all season, where he finally goes into the down deep, way below, and since very early in the series, we saw, that black pool of water at the bottom of that cave, and Juliet was so afraid of it, and to see Lucas take that leap of faith and realize that there's really only, 2 feet of water in there was a cool moment.
Yeah. But then he gets to the door and he gets told to go back or whatever.
The voice, yes, the voice. It definitely sets the stage for an interesting one. So I will say that where book 1 ends does not at all seem plausible for the 10th and final episode.
Hold your beer moment.
Not even a hold your beer could land that plane. I will be very, very surprised if they get to that same place. Maybe they will. It would have to be an amazing patented Jaime Lopez hold my beer episode to get to where they got to at the end of season 2 to get to the end of book 1. They've already weaved in some stuff that's from other parts of the books, because I think they realized that, one, the method that Hugh Howey used to write his 3 books wouldn't necessarily work well as a narrative structure for these movies, so they're kind of weaving things together. Yeah. And they've already announced they're only going to do 2 more seasons of this, so...
Have you read all 3 books, or just the 1 book? Or
I have fully read the first one. I am reading the second one, but I was actually just talking with my aunt, who has read... she said she's read the entire trilogy 3 times. She's a very avid reader, and a huge fan of the series, and she said, oh, no, there's, they couldn't do it that way, so... I think it'll be interesting to see how they land this plane.
Right.
We'll find out. We'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, for sure.
Since you've read the book, I'm really kind of curious. Last week, I speculated that the way that they showed what's happening in Silo 17, I said, it kind of feels like they didn't have the guts to keep the main character off the show for 3 or 4 episodes straight. And I bet in the books, it doesn't feel like it's being stretched out the way it was here in the show to me. I was like, yeah, Tim, I think they could have handled Juliet's part in 2 episodes if they didn't constantly go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, the second half of the first book, Wool, does have this same kind of structure. It is sort of a chapter in the one silo, a chapter in the other silo, and it kind of goes back and forth. I'm trying to figure out how to not spoil anything.
You stop talking now.
Yeah. But where the book starts to come to is more complicated than that. So they haven't gotten to that. But you're right, Jaime, in that the parts where she's alone I mean, one, they're very much told, focusing on her isolation. There's a lot more of her just sort of alone and trying to sort of puzzle her way to survival inside of Silo 17. I'm kind of glad they didn't do more of that, because that would probably get a little tedious. I love Rebecca Ferguson, but I don't need to see her grunt and, hurt herself anymore for any more episodes. I don't think we need that, but I think it would be... I don't know if they kind of did that at the beginning of the season, right? They did sort of one episode focused on her, and then they did one episode focused on Silo 18, and then they've kind of been going back and forth ever since then.
Right.
It kind of felt like all of this has been a little stretched out. Like, don't you feel like the people in Mechanical plotting a revolution, Bernard working against them stuff is kind of stretched a lot?
In terms of time, you mean?
Well, I mean, it kind of started in episode 2. Here we are. We've seen now 9 episodes of season 2, and I mean, there's been a couple of they went up and they got framed for the judge's murder, and then they had to go back down, and they almost got caught.
Like, to me, that's what I was saying last week. It kind of, that feels like weeks, right?
Yeah, it just kind of drags a little bit from my perspective. I mean, I like. So I have to be careful that I don't become a hypocrite here, because I like that they took the time to spend time with more of the characters in Silo 18, because then we're more invested with them.
Mm-hmm.
I care more about Knox. I care more about Billings. I care more about, all the characters that are down there than I did before. So that when their lives are at risk, it does create actual dramatic tension. Whereas coming out of season 1, a lot of those characters, with the exception of Walker, most of them were kind of peripheral. I guess Billings wasn't so much, but the people who are Mechanical and stuff didn't really have a huge presence.
Right.
And so if they immediately started risking their lives, you'd be like, whatever. So I like that they did that. But I feel like maybe they dwelled on it just a little longer than I might have wanted for a 10-episode series. When real estate and episode count is rapidly diminishing, we're going to be at episode 20 of 40 by tonight. So time's a wasting. Don't waste any more of it.
Yeah, and these new characters are just introduced are a little bit like the people in the wall in Space Oddities. What are they called? Solar Opposites.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
kind of what are the ants doing inside the trap today?
Yeah, exactly. It's the side story.
Yeah. Yep. But I thought this was a good one in that it resolved some of this stuff, and I'm hoping that the 10th episode will also in turn both resolve and leave us with, wanting more, as we are probably looking at a couple of years before we see the next season of this, and 4 before we probably see the whole thing wrap up, right? Because other than Slow Horses, nobody can do a show in a year. So the other thing that we talked about that we're going to have just a quick discussion about. So we got a very kind donation from one of our regular listeners and contributors on our Slack channel, Keen, who said, it's a shame you guys haven't had a chance to talk about Star Trek Prodigy, given that it's not available to stream anywhere in Canada. And he made a kind donation to the cause, so that Tim and I can now watch the second and final season of Prodigy. Jaime, you were lucky enough, obviously, to be able to watch it through one of your streaming channels in the United States. So we're going to do a couple of episodes per week for the next few weeks and just sort of talk about our impressions and what we're thinking about what we've seen. So we all agreed to watch... I wrote it down here. What was the name of the two-parter here to start? Oh, Into the Breach. Mm-hmm. Into the Breach, the two-part intro to season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy. Jaime, what were your impressions of this comeback after long-awaited and probably initially doomed, but then suddenly surviving series reboot of season 2?
Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job it's a 2-parter, but that's really like 40 minutes all in.
Yeah.
Because it's a half-hour time slot for broadcasting on Nickelodeon, and so it's like 20 minutes per episode. So it's pretty breezy. So the first episode, I think, did a good job of bringing back most of the Scooby Gang together to join Admiral Janeway on a new mission, set up Admiral Janeway's senior staff, including the Doctor. And then the second episode does so what was Gwen up to? It's like, well, here's what was going on, and here's the other driving factor for the second season. So I think they did that pretty well. They introduced, some more folks like the Nova Squadron folks that are going to be antagonizing here. So it did a pretty good job of setting that up, and I think if you were a little lost on like what exactly happened, it kind of doesn't matter too much, because I think they did a good job of like, hey, these people had an adventure. They're going to go on a new adventure. Why? Because this lady's former coworker is lost in the past. Okay, got it. Right? They did like a really good recap. It wasn't like, oh my God, I got to go watch season 1 again to figure out what happened. Like, you could. It's obviously better if you know more, but I don't think you had to. I think they found the right line for making it easy and accessible to start jumping here at this point on the train.
I think the only thing that was missing from that first one, they kind of touch on that they all kind of have their strengths because they're in kind of different streams of learning. But I think if I were coming to this as we are, that's coming like pretty long after we watched the first season, I probably would have liked maybe just a scotch more, well, not even. I agree with Jaime. I don't think it really matters how they got to where they are. I think maybe I would have liked a little bit more about the characters, as far as why we should care about them, why they are so good together, like what they mean to each other. There was a little bit of that, but it didn't feel like it was quite as much as I was maybe hoping for. But then I also, we always kind of talk about this show. It's Starter Trek. This show is not aimed for us. It's aimed for a different audience. They probably don't want that character exposition. They kind of want to just jump in and have, the character's Stal says funny things and they go on an adventure and he makes an oopsie and then they have to go up through a wormhole. Like, it makes sense when you view it from that perspective, I suppose. But yeah, I just wasn't. I don't know. It's not a perfect show. I understand why it got canned after one season. Frankly, it's a little, I don't know, fundamental. It's a little basic. It's a little puerile. I don't know.
Yeah, remember, it is baby's first Star Trek, so it's got.
Well, that's it, right? And again, I always try and have that perspective. I think you kind of have to, right?
Yeah,
because otherwise.
It's I'm trying to remember exactly how things go in season 2, but I think it's pretty close to season 1, where there's a lot of explaining to the audience that this thing exists, and potentially why it exists, and that's the like, oh, for newbies, here's what's happening, like kids, and then for the parents who probably grew up watching Voyager, is like, oh, they go pretty deep into some lore for Voyager.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun. I must say, I liked seeing the Doctor again. It was fun to have Robert Picardo back being the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously some returning faces from Janeway's previous crew. And, again, it is a likable show at times, but it is just, it's not my favorite. Not my favorite. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go on the record and say it is my least favorite Star Trek.
Right.
And nothing that happened in these first 2 episodes changed my opinion of that.
Yeah, and whatever you do not go into the wormhole too early.
Yeah. I mean, that's, again, it's kind of every element of Star Trek that we kind of make a little bit of fun of. I kind of almost found it a little disappointing in retrospect. I found myself watching this and thinking, kind of a shame that Lower Decks never took a shot at this thing.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been fun? Couldn't they have had some fun with that?
Yeah, they could have. So I guess the one question I had, though, so Gwen is trying to deal with her father before she's even born. Is she gone back in time or something?
Yeah. So, well, because he was from the future, he went backwards we found out in season 1 that he went backwards, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So here now they are in the past, because they've also established that this wormhole specifically takes them to like exactly, was it 52 years ahead? And yeah.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
it seems like they're trying to sort of land that. I got to be honest, I didn't love all that stuff in the first season with her and her dad. I found it a little bit wearing. And when they were like, "We're going back to that planet," I was like, "Oh, are we? Do we have to? Can we just drop you off and you don't have to tell us what happened?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like in this one, she meets the younger version of her dad, who's like, "I'm so excited to have a daughter." I'm like, "You won't be."
Yeah.
I do admit, and it's not a Star Trek way to resolve the problem, but I do admit that during season 2, when Gwen's counterpart, I forget what the other girl's name is, she's like, "Oh look, I'm truly one of the people because look, my younger self is here." You kind of think like, well, maybe you should stab her, and then she won't be here.
Yeah.
Using the, I want to say it was in Avengers Endgame when Rhodey says like, "Why don't we just go find baby Thanos?" And then makes like a strangling kind of motion. Let me just solve the problem there.
Yeah, I got a solution to our problem. Yeah, I don't know. Like I say,
well, stay tuned, kids. We'll be covering this for the next 5 weeks or so.
Yeah, and also maybe send Jonathan some medication or something so he can get through it.
Sure. All right, cool. So Jaime, you had we skipped over your. I saw this post earlier related to Silo, and I put it on our Slack, but I guess you also stumbled across it at some point today.
Oh, I didn't see it in Slack. Yeah, this is a little Instagram reel of somebody who's it's a couple, and it says when your wife is way too into Silo. So it's really short. It's a nice, cute one. I think you can probably guess where it's going, but it's kind of fun seeing it done low budget.
Yeah, that's definitely an inside joke. Cool. Well, I think we should probably move on to the watch list. What do you think? Or is that with it, right? Yeah, we're not going to do the other 2 shows. Okay, cool. All right, let's move on to the watch list. And Jonathan, you're up first with a guess what?
Hey, kids, we're going to have some actual new Star Trek next week.
Woo-hoo.
So Star Trek Section 31 is dropping on the good old Paramount Plus next Friday. So for those of you scoring at home, that's the 24th of January. We're going to get initially it was promised as a show, but now it is a movie. So we're going to get a little bit of, hopefully some closure on what happened with the Emperor Georgiou character who, famously walked through a time portal in Discovery, never to be seen again till now. So that'll be kind of fun to get into. Of course, we will be talking about it here on Spotcast when we all have had a chance to watch it. In the meantime, I watched a couple of things, and I'm still waiting for my beloved compatriots to watch, but I'm just going to quickly touch on a couple of shows that I watched the last little while. Creature Commandos, the first new DC cinematic universe thing to drop, has now finished its run. It's only 7 episodes. It's very edgy. It's very bloody. It's very sad at times. Basically each episode is framed as a sort of an origin story for each of the characters that we meet in the Task Force M, the Creature Commandos. And I enjoyed it, although I must admit I wouldn't mind sitting down to watch it in a binge. It dropped, week after week, and it kind of didn't carry the flow for me as well as I would have liked. I think it'll be interesting to watch in one chunk, and I think that's obviously how you guys will probably watch it, so it'll be good to reconnect on that down the road. But if this is a taste of what we're going to get from James Gunn, he certainly loves the toys that he's playing with in the toy box, and he's certainly not afraid to tell pretty out there stories. So this could be a good sign. The other thing that I watched over the holidays was the What If Season 3. This was, they basically put out an episode a day for about 8 days over the holidays. And this is being billed as the final season of this show. It focuses on a lot of the characters who are more from the more recent chunk of Marvel movies, so you can look forward to seeing, more of the Red Guardian, Kingo, the character from the Eternals, There's a Howard the Duck episode, so yeah, take that. There's a Riri Williams episode. There's a young female Hawkeye episode. There's as I mentioned to Jaime in a previous podcast, there's a tie-in to X-Men 97. So there's your mileage varies depending on how deep in the woods you are on Marvel stuff, and also just whether you're okay with, everything but turned a little weird. I like this series. I think it's fun. I never really loved What If as a comic concept just because it didn't mean anything and it didn't matter. Here, it matters a little more in that there is a through line through the 3 seasons. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there is certainly things that tie all of the characters and things that have happened in the first 2 seasons together. So it's satisfying in that way. And did I mention there's a Howard the Duck focused episode? Because there's a whole episode with Seth Green playing
not just
Howard the Duck.
Not just like a 5-minute...
No, sir. It is a full 30-minute episode focused on your man Howard the Duck. So here we are.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the highlight for me. Anything they want to do with Howard, I am down for. But it was good. It wasn't knock your socks off, but if you enjoyed the previous 2, there's certainly enough there for you. And lots of they do a good job of getting a lot, not all, but a lot of the voice actors who are the actual actors from the show. So to get David Harbour back in an episode as Red Guardian, where he's on a team-up adventure with Sebastian Stan as Winter Soldier. The 2 of them are both really good actors, and they're both really good voice actors, and it makes that episode crackle. So, yeah, again, not every episode's great, not every part of the series is great, but there's lots of moments that are great, there are individual episodes that are great, and if you enjoyed the other stuff, check it out. Good.
Cool. All right. What you got, Jaime?
I got around to watching on Netflix the mini-series, documentaries type series, Muscles and Mayhem, an unauthorized story of American gladiators. This is a show that I enjoyed watching as a kid. I had never seen the first season, so it was kind of bananas to see how low rent it was when it came out in its pilot season, and just how wildly irresponsible everything was at the very beginning in terms of safety for the contestants and the gladiators. It was kind of neat to see. It's very...
These are the guys who do the running and the jumping and the obstacle course stuff?
No, that's an American Ninja Warrior. This is like almost like the Running Man gladiatorial combat.
Yeah, so like they do events like the joust, where you have 2 people up, suspended on very high pedestals, and they have the pugil sticks to hit each other with. You've got they actually do have an obstacle course kind of thing, but that's the Eliminator at the very end.
This used to be on TV or something like that.
It was
right?
it was on Fox when I was like a teenager, maybe.
Yeah. And so this whole thing has a lot of like professional wrestling vibes to it. So I'm kind of interested in moving on to the Vince McMahon documentary, because I'm sure that's going to be very similar vibes around steroids and sex and violence and greed.
Yeah, I watched it, and it's interesting, but the timing is unfortunate on that one, because the even more extreme, because there's been so many allegations against Vince McMahon over the years, but the even more extreme violations that led him to once again drop out of working with WWE happened while they were filming it. So it's kind of feels like something's missing. But some of the people they got access to, and some of the backstories of some of the people, and just the sort of the amount of like insanity that they described during some of the heyday of the 80s and 90s is well worth watching for.
So that said, I watched the movie about Andre the Giant. Have you seen that one?
I have. The documentary?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I watched it when it came out. It is. It's really well done. And actually, I enjoyed that, I think, a lot more than the Vince McMahon one, because
of course, yeah,
his story has a beginning, middle, and end, whereas Vince's, it doesn't. Like, speaking of people who have done terrible things and gotten away with it, there's a long list.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. All right. Well, as we were talking through the show, I was looking up some stuff about Will Wheaton. I was looking for the name of the movie Stand By Me, which I couldn't remember. But as I left my iPad open, I saw a documentary called In Search of Tomorrow, which covers 80s and 90s sci-fi. And it's a documentary about all the sort of sci-fi stars and movies and things that you would have watched back in the day. So I'm going to try and find that one to watch at some point, which will be kind of interesting. And then my last one here is like how to watch The Day of the Jackal. So the backstory is I cut my cable about 2 months ago, right? So I've always had Bell Fibe TV that comes with my internet, but I was also on Rogers Cable, and I was paying like way too much money to them. So we finally decided to cut the cable because we were watching more stuff on YouTube and streaming and all the Apple TV and Paramount and all that kind of stuff. So there's no point paying for cable anymore. But somehow I stumbled across being able to watch The Day of the Jackal, which is on Peacock in the United States, and it's on Showcase here in Canada. And I don't have Showcase. I don't have it as part of my selection of channels. You randomly, it's just like cable. You have to pick a random bunch of channels to watch, right? But so somehow I was able to watch the first 8 episodes of Jackal. I can't tell you how or why, but I was able to stream them to my Apple TV. I assumed it was because they were like on demand kind of like shows you could watch, right? I don't know if it was like a free preview during the last couple of weeks, but we're still in January, still in the same month, right? So I'm not sure what's going on. So I've been trying to look on Showcase, trying to get back in. It's either on Global or Showcase, and it says I'm not subscribed to either one of those two, and I couldn't figure out how to get in there. So I was just looking at my phone the other day, and I thought, And I went into my phone, and sure enough, The Day of the Jackal was available to me. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. It's through the cable that I had cut. So this technical, I love it when apps screw up, right, Jaime? But somehow I'm still logged in on the Global app on my phone. And yeah, and I was going to tell a story too about how, you know, how they're always going after these monopolies and stuff like that and breaking them up and all that sort of story you guys hear about in the States. Well, they did that here in Canada, right? They had, I think Rogers and Bell own the majority of channels or whatever. And then I think about 2-3 years ago, I think somebody was getting rid of something else, and the Canadian government said you can't own all of this stuff. It would be horrible for everybody. So they split up the monopoly in between the two carriers, right? So some things are owned by Bell and some things are owned by Rogers, and nobody understands who or why or what. But somehow Showcase, I'm not sure how, ended up in the Global Television Network conglomeration or whatever. So that's how, anyway, how I was able to watch Day of the Jackal. So I did actually get to watch episode 9, which came out last Thursday. Episode 10 is on as I speak, so some point in the next couple of days, I hope to be able to watch the season finale of The Day of the Jackal. So, really good, yeah. It's a really good show because, you know, it's a character I like from. It's based on the book, which is what the movie from '73 was. And last week I put both trailers in the show notes. But yeah, it's a good show. I wouldn't necessarily say it's Eddie Redmayne's best performance, but it's an interesting show to watch. It's got lots of suspense. I like the character Bianca, who plays the detective in this one, who's trying to find the jackal, and she's 007 from the last Daniel Craig movie, the same actress, right? Yeah. So anyway, so that's what I'm going to be watching, this Day of the Jackal. So I guess with that, Jonathan, if people want in touch with you, where would they find you?
You can find me on Instagram as @JPK News, or you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/@JPK.
All right. And Jaime, if people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
I'm on Twitter as @Dev with the Hair.
I was rooting for you, buddy. I knew you could do it.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, my name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA, on the Blue Sky, Mastodon, various other things too. And yeah, and trying to convince my friends and families that we should get off the book. But they're all saying, where should we go? I said, well, come on over and join our Slack channel. Anyway.
Maybe we need to create them a different Slack channel.
Yeah, well, we can do that too. But yeah, I mean, trying to get them, like, the other movie I watched the other day was called Thelma. It's I saw the interview with the actress who plays Thelma. She's like a 90-year-old woman who gets scammed in a phone
I
scam.
saw that. She was on Colbert, right? I saw that too. Yeah.
So
June Squibb.
June Squibb, I highly recommend. She's one of those actors. She's like that guy, kind of thing. Because I always
June
get her.
Squibb's been acting for like 70 years.
No, I know, but I get her mixed up with Ron Howard's mom, who played the mother in Apollo 13, right? Or the grandmother in Apollo 13. So she's sort of that character. That's how I sort of know her. But yeah, it's a really good movie. She why am I telling you this? I don't know, but she gets scammed on the phone scam, and she decides to go back and get her money. Oh, it's all about the relationship I have with people on Facebook is because they don't understand anything else.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's sort of funny to see how she navigates the internet, and she uses her phone and stuff like that, and she's trying to be on the lam as she's trying to go back and get her money. But she keeps accidentally uploading shots from her phone where she is, right? So that kind of stuff. But I mean, not to belittle her. I mean, that's the whole point. Is like people sort of look down on her because she's an older person, doesn't understand technology, but she does pretty well considering what she has to do to get her money back. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. All right, and so that's it. We'll say goodbye now. Bye.
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 See you in the future.
Bye. No, that's all right. See you in the future. Thank you.
Now you forgot your line.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
What have you got in the House of podcast?
Oh, so this is a callback to the part where you started our episode when you were talking about Ben Stiller buying some of that stuff at auction. So I listened to this podcast while I was packing last month over the holidays, and it's a podcast I normally listen to. It's called House of R, which is on the Ringer Podcast Network, and I really enjoy the work that Joanna Robinson and Mallory Rubin do on that podcast. They like to talk nerdy too, but on this particular episode, they had on Ryan Condal, who's the showrunner for House of the Dragon, and Dave Mendel, who was the creator of Veep, and who also worked on Seinfeld and all kinds of other stuff. So these are two like big names in Hollywood. They are also huge collectors of science fiction, fantasy props and things, and so on this show they talk about sort of the origins of their getting into prop collecting and how they got into what they focused on, what they have gotten so far, and then also what their sort of dream items are. And it's a really fascinating discussion with these guys who, we talk about these things sometimes where it's like, oh, they've got this like original Star Trek thing. And as you say, we wonder like who bought it. These guys, like they're seeking after, like they want the gun that Deckard used in Blade Runner. They want, a complete entire outfit from like a specific movie. Like they're going after these like hugely like whale items, and they own some of these things because obviously they're very, very successful in a very high paying industry, and they've been able to afford it. But if you are somebody who's interested in just sort of the world of high-end sci-fi prop collecting, it's a fascinating discussion. These two are very passionate about it, and it's a good listen. So I would recommend that for sure.
Cool.
but you will find yourself at some point going, "You guys actually own that? F you!" Because some of the stuff they own is like, so where do you live?
Yeah. Adam Savage wants to built his own copy of the Deckard's Blade Runner gun.
Yeah, there are some really good prop replicas, and they mentioned that you'll have like 2 or 3 parts of something, so you'll buy a replica, but then eventually, 10 years later, somebody's putting the original up, and it's, so then they start having those discussions of like, how much can I spend on this without my wife murdering me, and all these different, and if I get it, where do I put it, and all the things that people who like to collect things have, but at a much higher cost and a much higher obscurity, because these are one of one things. I mean, in some cases they say like, well, they made 3 of this helmet, but I wanted to have the one where it specifically is in this scene worn by this actor or performer or whatever. One of the guys, and I can't remember if it was Ryan or Dave, one of them owns the helmet. It owns the entire uniform, but specifically the helmet of the troop who bonks his head in the original Star Wars.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I was like, and he's like, I made sure it was that one. And I'm like, that's pretty freaking funny. Has it got
a dent in it?
Yeah, it does. It's got a scratch mark on it. And he's like, it's because it's got serial numbers and everything, so they can absolutely know that is the one. And he's like, how could you not want to have that? I'm like, absolutely. That is, you're going to have one stormtrooper complete uniform of the original. That's got to be the one, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. But it's like I say, it's a long podcast. I think it's probably like, almost 2 hours that they talk, but it is, it's really interesting to sort of see what they get into and what they're collecting, and just talking a little bit of behind the curtains on that like high end sort of prop collecting. It's neat to hear, which actually spurs an interesting discussion. If you could have 2 or 3 things from science fiction fantasy, what would be the things? What would be your like go-to? Would you want like Back to the Future hoverboard, Darth Vader mask, Conan's sword? Like what's the thing? What's the thing you want?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. I feel like like a starship model, because that would be fairly practical to actually have like in your house. Like what am I going to do with this like cool DeLorean? I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to just leave it in the garage.
Somebody has one of those. Yeah.
Whereas if I had any Enterprise, like I could reasonably have that on camera in the background while I'm at work. Just have it be a weird flex.
Like, is that the original freaking Enterprise behind Jaime?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I can't see past his hair. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always wanted a HAL 9000 computer, but I made one of those for myself. What else would I want?
Like the monolith from 2001?
Actually, there's somebody's made a the action figures, or like the 6-inch action figures.
Oh yeah.
There's a package of the monolith.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's like, it's got like your parents put it together, and, batteries not included and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's literally just a black slab in a plastic, I don't know what you call those, the backer board things.
Yeah,
like a package.
Yeah. Mint in box,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty good ones out there, replicas and stuff. Like you can buy like, a hoverboard, or Nike released Marty's shoes from Back to the Future 2 at one point, and that's kind of neat. I got to think, if I could have one thing, this is going to sound so stupid, I would love to have Dark Helmet's outfit from Spaceballs, the Rick Moranis with the helmet with the flip up mask. That would be pretty funny. Although I'm like a foot taller than poor Rick Moranis, so it probably wouldn't be a wearable one for me, but I just thought that was such a hilarious outfit. I always liked that one a lot.
Yeah.
A Ghostbusters backpack, yeah.
Well, there've been lots of movies where, like one of the things I wanted to ask Carol about making me once is the orange jumpsuits that the astronauts wear on the shuttle that they wore in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So there's been Capaldi and David Tennant have both been in shows where they were wearing those, and so that'd be kind of cool to have. And then the other one, and then of course because of the moon landing, occasionally you'll see like an Apollo style moon outfit. That'd be kind of cool to have too, right? So, but you can get those made, but there's thousands of dollars to get them made.
Yeah. I mean, like Malcolm Reynolds' pistol from Firefly would be a good one. Or how about this one? The Terminator arm from Terminator 2, the one that they use as the template to make all that stuff. That'd be kind of neat.
Yeah. I like Deckard's rifle too.
Deckard's gun is pretty dope too. Yeah, that would be a really cool one.
Yeah. But I don't really want a lightsaber, although unless it was working.
How about the One Ring from Lord of the Rings? That'd be a neat one. You could wear that one out, right? You could just strap that on a necklace and be like, I feel so tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it makes you realize that amazing history of film props in movies, but how about the original Jabba the Hutt? Why not? We put that in the living room.
Yeah.
I remember watching a special when I was a kid where they show it took like 4 guys to operate. Like one does an arm, one does a tongue, one does one wiggles the tail. I'm like, hey guys, want to play Jabba the Hutt? Let's climb inside.
That's true of a lot of the Muppets too. Some of them are two people to work the hands and the puppet and.
Yeah, but that was massive. It was 10 feet long.
No, I imagine it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, let that one roll around. You can always follow up on our Slack channel. This is a good conversation. This is definitely a Slack conversation.
Well, I do go and scour eBay from time to time looking for weird things like that, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never know what you'll find. I have a few things here that are collectible that need to go up on some site for sale. I got myself a Corgi Batmobile, a reissue, right, of the 1966 Batmobile, which I had when I was a little kid. And it's a lot smaller than I remember, unless this is I can't remember if this is actual size or not.
Well, they made a few different variations in size, because I remember I had the one that was matchbox sized.
Yeah, no, this is
my big brother had a bigger version.
So this one's got to be 4 inches long and a couple of inch and a half wide. But maybe because my hands were little, I remember it being much bigger. It's the one with the Batman die cast on the bottom, right? And it shoots out these little rockets, and it had this little blade on the front they used to cut my sister's necklaces with. And they used to hate
that's
that.
The same one that my brother had. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I've got, and it's got the hook on. And it's interesting. This one, mine was just the Batmobile, but this one has a hook on it for the Batboat. Because there was a version of this you can get with the Batboat.
Yep.
And I also got a reissue of the Yellow Submarine from Corgi as well. So.
Yep.
Because when I was 7, I got taken to the downtown Eaton's in Montreal, and they said, "What do you want for your birthday night?" So I got a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and the Yellow Submarine.
Huh.
And then the last time I saw the Yellow Submarine was at my mom's house. It had been teased upon by all my nephews.
Oh, of course it had.
Because the periscopes at the top are plastic, so soft rubber.
Yeah.
And they were all nicely chewed. Yep.
Children.
I know, kids, eh? No respect.
Yeah. So, follow up to my big move. So, last Thursday, I drove down to New Brunswick, where I will be relocating with my family permanently. And I was doing this by taking a road trip with one of my close friends, Gord. So Gord and I piled into the car with my dog, and we loaded it up, and we started driving. And I said, no, we got to grab one more thing. I grabbed the best Christmas present / birthday present that I got, which was this great Darth Vader helmet that I happen to have now.
Ooh. Yeah.
And did we wear that helmet while driving down the 401, the Trans-Canada Highway, all the way? Yes, we did. Did we look out the window and lock eyes with people in the back seats of cars? Yes, we did. It was a delightful thing to bring along. When I moved into my temporary home down here in a very small, very rural area of eastern New Brunswick, I had to do some tidying. I dusted off an old piano that actually has been in our family for about half a century. And I put that Darth Vader head right on top of it, and damned if it doesn't look an awful lot like Beethoven. So nice, yeah. I've had a couple people come by to say hi. They gave me a little birthday shindig last week, and everyone was laughing hysterically at my impromptu Beethoven bust on the top of the piano, which happens to look an awful lot like vintage 1977 Darth Vader mask. So
it is a vintage 1977 mask.
Hey, what a coincidence! Yes.
Yeah, I actually that was one of those things where I bought it from somebody in Oshawa, and I'd forgotten how far Oshawa is from my house.
It certainly. Yes, it is in Toronto traffic. It is.
So it was an investment just to get it.
Yes.
And then when I got there, he's like, "I've also got a Darth Vader cookie dish or whatever." I'm like, "No, thanks."
Yeah.
But if you want one, I know where there is one. But
well, I'll keep that in mind. I'll look for that next Christmas.
Yeah, and asked him why he was selling it. He sort of said, "Well, my wife has decided it needs to go."
I think that is an unfortunate anthem for a lot of why different random collectibles end up out in the world.
For sale, yeah.
She said I could keep 2 things.
I checked to ask him if that's the same original Velcro on the top, and he says, yes, it is.
Yeah, it's just, it's a 2-piece mask. I don't know if you told Jaime about this, but
Nope, I haven't.
It's a 2-piece mask where basically the helmet the top part comes off, the mask goes on, and the helmet goes back on, and it's on. And it's actually got like a filter in it so you can breathe and you can see out of it. It's it's quite a thing.
Definitely. I'll post a picture to your friends of the show channel.
Yeah, I think Tim took a picture when we were
it's in 3D. I took it with my special camera.
Oh, even better.
Yeah. Like more photos.
Yeah. It was definitely made for some fun on the road trip anyways. Kept us amused for a little while.
Yep. So I'm just posting it to the friends of the show channel there, Jaime. That's Jonathan, in case you were curious about who it is.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Hopefully people on the Trans-Canada enjoyed it too.
Well, we like to try and keep people. Of course,
you weren't the driver. You weren't driving with it on. You were riding.
We made a point. We made a point of making sure that it was just the passenger that got to experience that, because probably wouldn't have been the best thing to be wearing while driving, especially if you see that picture. I mean, it's not an ideal driving uniform.
Yeah, definitely. Well, can you aim a blaster with it on? That's the question, right?
I mean, I would just use the force. I wouldn't need to see. Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
Yeah, right. Cool. Anyway, I gotta go run. There's a nice hot bath waiting for me, and
and it's an hour in the future from where you are. So
it's almost tomorrow. Or it is tomorrow.
No, it's well into tomorrow. It's 12:40 at night here for me. So yeah.
Cool. 12 what?
12:40 on Friday morning. That is where I'm talking to you right now.
11:38 here. So I don't know. It's real sort of time distortion. So.
Yes, and Jaime is somewhere in the past, somewhere in the far distant past.
Yep, definitely. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.
Talk to you next week.
See you later.
Bye, you guys.
Stay warm and save every day, all in the Kroger app.
Get 10 for $10 on select varieties of Kroger pasta, Starkist tuna pouches, or Powerade. Then get flavorful fresh Heritage Farm chicken split breast, drumsticks, or thighs for $1.49 a pound, all with your card.
Shop these deals at your local Kroger, less than 5 miles away. Or tap the screen now to download the Kroger app to save big today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Prices and product availability subject to change. Restrictions apply. See site for details.